Hey, everybody. I am here with probably one of the most experienced people I've had in the agency world on the podcast, Joel Kleinberg. And I'm going to let Joel, well, first of all, how are you doing today?
Oh man, stoked to be here. Thank you for asking me to
Yeah.
join.
Joel, I would love for you to introduce yourself and a little bit about the work that you're currently doing, and maybe we can go from there.
Sure. Joel Kleinberg. Nice to meet everybody out there. I am the managing director of experience for an agency in Portland, Oregon called Fort West. We consider ourselves primarily a brand strategy and design agency, although we do campaigns and some marketing work as well. But we definitely take more of a strategic lens on everything. We like to say we're an unbiased brand and demand agency, with the word unbiased being underlined double times because we've found in our world, we're kind of like a ragtag group of agency refugees. And we found in our career that many of the places where you go, whatever your whatever you do best happens to be the solution to everybody's problem. So, you go to Wyden Kennedy, somehow magically it's a TV commercial. You go to a social media agency, wow, every problem in your life is solved with social. So we much more like to think about what's the business problem that needs to be solved and what's the strategy and creative that comes alongside it that's going to really not only solve that problem, but, you know, check your box on your marketing list or whatever it is, but also get you to the business outcome that you're looking for. And so we really try to think about it more holistically through what we call the four quadrants of business, which we would call market, finance, people, and product.
Hey, very cool. And I know that your agency, helps brands discover their right to win and to claim their place in culture. And you guide brands that have lost their way to not only find their place again, but also re-engage with the culture that surrounds them.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Well, first, just to bring it up a level contextually, we got to think about brand and how it is different from something like marketing or whatever. Brand is the timeless, whereas marketing is timely. Marketing is like, I have a product launch, or there's an event coming up, or there's a moment in culture that I want to market around, like the Olympics. It's meant to be timeless, right? This is more about who you are, what you stand for, your capabilities, your DNA, your heritage, your origin story. But brands don't live in a vacuum. You live within the context of the culture where you operate. So it's also about what's going on with the big trends, what's going on with your competition, who is in the culture that you support. And so for a lot of companies, they'll get stuck with getting on the product level and being very sales focused. Or, for instance, one of my clients was Igloo Coolers, who we rebranded back in 2016. And at the time, they were the number one cooler brand in sales, but they also had very tight margins, largely because they had been relegated to becoming a supplier for big box stores like Walmart. And so Walmart was pulling the strings there. So then you have a company like Yeti come along and show that people will spend up to $350 on a cooler. So for Igloo, that whole idea was like, well, hold on a minute. You guys invented the cooler. I mean, the first water jug that was in a cooler format, Igloo created. For them, it was, you know, a, a bucket on the oil fields of Houston with a guy putting a dipper in it and skimming the dirt off the top. Right. And then after them, you had a nice cold insulated metal tin thing that was insulated that people could get their water out of. And they became like the gold standard, right? And with things like the Playmate, they sort of were at this time in American history where the car camping started and the SUV was invented and outdoor equipment and outdoor stores and tents and all that was happening in the American dream in the 50s and 60s. And Igloo was right there creating these coolers that helped you to go out fishing in the Gulf Coast or go car camping or spend a day at the beach with your family or a birthday party in the park. It wasn't about keeping things cold. It was about sharing your love through great drinks and great food with everyone who loved you. And so for us, we had to remind them that they weren't about just keeping things cold. They were about helping people to live that American dream, right? But, and so that's kind of what I mean when we say own your place in culture and your right to win. You got to know what your customers expect you to be in their lives, what kind of progression or innovation they're expecting you to bring to their lives, and where you're allowed to innovate, right? So for Igloo, one of the ways we help them is don't go after Yeti strictly in the outdoor hardcore market because that's not where you live. You live at the baseball park,
Yeah.
at the at the playground and at the beach. Like it's people getting together to have a good time in a casual setting.
Yeah. No.
That's what it is. And so once they owned that, they were able to both focus their innovation and product design in that segment, as well as, retake that place in culture. And over the last, several years, they've just blown up in the last 10 years, doing a really good job, leave a brand based on that playbook. And now you see them again. Now you get a Star Wars playmate, and you can have every major collegiate team playmate, and they've reestablished themselves in popular culture as the go-to cooler brand. But they had to remember that that's what they were about, as opposed to just being a supplier for Walmart.
Wow. Wow. Great. I love- yeah, that was awesome. And a great example, first of all. I think even in that example, like, you know, reminding Igloo that especially that their market is still huge, right? Like they're not going after this very niche market that Yeti might be going after. They've got this big market that they can still go after. And I love what you said, that marketing is timely and brand is timeless. That's a cool little pull quote, that's awesome. And, off camera, you mentioned that Fort West gave you the opportunity to mentor a new generation of creatives. How is this
Mhm.
leadership role influence your own creative process, and how do you foster that same sense of mentorship within your agency?
Well, it's interesting. I came to Fort West after my own agency was closing, some irreconcilable differences between partners. It's the way it goes. And it was really kind of a breath of fresh air for me because I was able to kind of take off of my shoulders all these worries I had as an owner. When you're an owner, I'm thinking about cash flow. I'm thinking about vendors. I'm thinking about the next 6 months of work. I'm thinking about taxes, you know? And I came to Fort West and I refocused in on my craft, which is building brands. And over the next couple of years, clients came back to me, other clients were referred, and we just started to grow. And in fact, through the pandemic, we grew incredibly. And pretty quickly, I had a big team of creatives and strategists working with me. And I sort of naturally elevated to become more of the mentor for them because I had been developing the process that I use for branding alongside my ex-partner and another young woman I worked with at Nemo Design in Portland. We kind of put this thing together and then kind of took our own takes on it as we moved on. And so, but it was different from what any of these people had experienced. And so I just naturally started to take up this role of let's talk about how to do this the way that's going to be better.
Right.
And, at the time, my boss, who owns Fort West, was like, I'm just going to make you the managing director and just try to get you out of the work
Yeah.
and have you instead managing the work through the team. And at first I was a little bit like, okay, because, I had spent a lot of time doing it and I really enjoy it. But that first time someone you have taught how to build a brand and a team that have started building identity design and building brand design based on that system. And it's amazing work coming out, incredible stuff. And if you go to the Fort West site, you might see Safeguard Cyber. That's an example of one of them. And I just all of a sudden felt more pride and felt more fulfilled than I had in a really long time. And I realized that it was just, for me, it was more, it's the word I'm looking for, just more fulfilling to know that I was teaching these really amazing younger creatives
Yeah.
how to take what I've learned over the last 15, 20 years and start to put it into their own processes and make it their own and make it better and see the work that comes out of it and just go like, oh my God, this is great stuff. Like, and I didn't have to write it. I didn't have to do it myself. And, after a career of always being like, yeah, give me that, hold my beer, and let me fix it. To be able to have total trust in a team that's able to do something where you still go like, hey, you may want to try that or mess with this, or have you thought about that? And like making it better. But it was both gave me a lot of fulfillment. Plus it also meant I could do three times more stuff because I could have teams working on things in parallel. And it wasn't limited to what I could do. It was limited to how much capacity we had in the shop at that time and what they were able to do with what we were teaching. And that was super cool.
That's awesome. I mean, yeah, you're right. Fulfilling is a great word for that because it's definitely fulfilling, I think, to see your team grow, but also to look within yourself and be like, wow, okay, cool. I'm in this stage of my career, I'm actually a good teacher. I'm a good leader, which is, and it's showing here. And I think that's, it's fulfilling in a lot of different ways, which is really cool.
To be a little finer point on it, actually, the other thing that really hit home with me over the last 5-6 years working at Fort West is that fulfillment actually extends beyond the agency and into the brands we're working with. It was my team who really pointed out to me that when we work with these brands to help them understand their place in culture and their right to win, the companies themselves feel seen.
Yeah.
Feel like I've been working here because I believe in what we do. And for the first time, the brand itself and the way it's shown and the way it's communicating and the way it looks and feels as valuable to me as I hold it. And I finally feel like we're going out to market in a way that really is commensurate with how much I care and how passionate I am about what I do every day, Because heck, man, you can be a project manager at a million places. But if you're a project manager at, let's say, Bell Helmets, it's you like bikes and motorcycles and you want that reflected. Or if you are a project manager at a cybersecurity company that's helping people to, extend their communications outside of their firewall safety to do their work, and that how, those people feel like, wow, I spent a lot of time and energy developing this software. And now I actually feel like this is a $1 billion brand that everyone's going to be into, it just and so it just became super fulfilling across the board to both build these teams and then see the companies who they're working with also feel, wow, in 10 years, I haven't felt this excited about my own company kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. You've developed a process at Fort West that you say works across all industries, not just lifestyle brands. And I was wondering, can you give us a glimpse into how this process transcends industries and enables you to unlock growth for companies in diverse sectors?
For sure. So we have to start again with that word culture. And when you think about the word culture, you generally think more in the lifestyle world, right? So I cut my teeth working on great American brands that had kind of lost their way. So Igloo coolers, Bell helmets, Mastercraft boats. These were all companies that I worked with, whether at Nemo Design or with my own agency, that had commoditized and they kind of lost their way. And with all of them, like Mastercraft invented the ski boat. Bell helmets invented the helmet, Igloo coolers, right? But they're also very lifestyle, right? It's motorcycling, it's cycling, it's boating, it's things that people associate with lifestyle and culture go hand in hand. And we worked a lot with Nike back at Nemo Design and especially Nike 6.0. And that was all about skate, surf. So when I started working at Fort West, we started working with health insurance was the first one. And so it was a real test for me to say like, okay, is this going to work? And my hypothesis is and was that it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter what business it is. It doesn't matter if it's B2C or B2B. You're in a culture. You're always in a culture. Health insurance has a culture to it.
Yeah.
Medical bill review has a culture to it. Cybersecurity, they all have a culture to it. I mean, CTOs who are picking cybersecurities, they're all gamers.
Yeah.
They're all science fiction nerds. Right. So you connect into that piece of their psyche and what they care about, you build connection. And that's part of the whole thing is helping brands to understand and build connection. So what our process does is there's a few pillars to it, right? First of it is just like, let's establish what the truth is. At my company, Actual, we used to say that we're looking for the relevant truths so we can create singular action. And the whole idea behind that is like, when you deal with anything brands, creative, it gets subjective quick. I don't like it, and you're like trying to get good feedback or whatever. The way you combat that is that you have to say first, okay, let's first through our discovery process, understand where the truth lies. What is the vision? What do we care about? Where do we come from? What is our culture? How do we want to position ourselves in the market? Let's all agree to that. Who is the consumer, right?
Yeah.
Who are you? Who do you serve? How do you bring it to life? Those are the three elements in a brand.
Yeah.
And that you're looking inside yourself, to your customer, and into the larger culture. And then you think about how you want to uniquely bring yourself to life within there and stand apart, right? So if you can identify the truth and get everybody to agree to it, then the minute you start putting flags in the sand and start taking creative decisions, you now have a measuring stick. We've all decided upon the personality of the brand. We build a brand character. We use archetypes, which many do. We do it in a special way, but whatever. But the point is, I've got a list of adjectives that you can go back to and say, is our messaging feeling like that? I'll have design principles that our design ethos is built upon before we even get to a creative direction. So that when people are evaluating creative, they can say, does this feel like our character? Does this measure up against our design principles of being strong, connected, thoughtful, and present, or whatever they might be, you know? And so once you're able to have people recognize where they live in culture and what their expectations are of how they're supposed to be in culture, what they're supposed to do, where they're supposed to innovate, how they're supposed to serve their customer, and then what their unique voice is, all of a sudden now you have the ability to like be unique, stand apart, understand your place, as well as build equity.
Right.
And the great thing about brand equity is that just equals margin over time.
Mhm.
People know you, the more they care about you, the more they return to you, the more price you can demand and have people pay it because you're the expert.
Yeah. Especially delaying that ask, I think. Like, how long can you go with delaying that ask until, you see these celebrities even that, did they capitalize on their brand, but they did it in a very specific way after they had reached a certain level of celebrity, like Conor McGregor and his whiskey brand, the tequila brand or something like that, that went like, that they use that brand equity in a really unique way. And so it's really refreshing, I think, just to me, just to hear you talk the way you talk, because when I hear you, I hear somebody who's like really been through it all, who's heard everything for the most part and just really knows what they're talking about, which is really cool. That's awesome. And so with your experience building brands and navigating the intersection of brand and culture, do you guys typically see opportunities to collaborate with other agencies or specialists or bring even more value to clients when you guys are trying to like tackle complex brand transformations?
So yes, the short answer is yes. It all kind of depends, obviously, but the short answer is yes. So like, for instance, if you redo your brand, you probably need to redo your digital presence.
Right.
We do some of that. We do a whole lot of that. We had more digital resources available to us, 3-4 years ago. The last few years have been pretty tough for the industry and we've had to tighten up. We've focused a lot more on the brand and building the brands. But when they say, hey, we're ready to build a website, then we partner with a digital agency. We are in the creative driver's seat for the most part, but we're going to work with someone who has the best expertise on how you want to build that stuff. So for instance, if it's an e-commerce site, that's one set of just being a brochure site. Do they want to use a WYSIWYG tool or do they need some custom development? Is a giant enterprise that requires a very huge, set of, like a .NET system. I'm not going to carry all the different kinds of developers and resources and people to do that. I will have UX experts understanding what the experience needs to be.
Yeah.
I want to put you with the right set of digital developers and thinkers that have experience with what your business needs to meet its goals, particularly that digital has to serve with a member portal or an e-commerce tool or anything that actually is as part of the business embedded in the digital. Then we want to work with experts who know how to do that so that we can control the brand experience. They can control the user's experience and making sure that the business objectives get hit.
Yeah,
if we're doing a marketing program, we may work with media companies. We've done media in the past. Sometimes we need to work with a larger media company who's going to be able to have a larger reach.
Right.
If you're doing a trade show or something like that, I'm absolutely bringing in experts in environmental design and those kinds of things. Right now, we're working with one of our partners who've just recently brought in a product design company who I've worked with in the past. And so we're going to collaborate with them on updating the onboarding experience for, new members and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think it's, that part of it's super important because when you take a brand through a huge transformation, or let's say they go to a different agency and that agency is responsible for writing their ad copy and they're using old brand assets. It's like, it's almost like, well, what was the point of us going to this huge transformation if you guys aren't going to get it? And that's what sometimes happens in the agency world. And I think that's really frustrating for the creative side, where they've just gone through all of this work to try to make that happen. And it's not being represented, equitably. Well, I've got one more question.
Well, I just want to comment on that because that's like kryptonite when I hear that. Only because when we deliver something, the whole point of it is to deliver something usable. I don't want PDF that's going to sit on someone's server. I want something that's going to be fully brought into the psyche of those who work at that company and be comprehensive enough so that if they decide to work with someone else other than us, they can't get it wrong, right?
Yeah.
The way the messaging guidelines and tone of voice are written, if you're getting it wrong, then you're no good and you shouldn't be doing your work. You should be able to take what we have given you and give it to any creative. And that's the why we build it the way we do. It's built the first half, the executive summary, that's built for the leadership team.
Right.
Second half, the more brand guide, style guide stuff, that's built for marketers and creatives.
Mm-hmm.
It's built in such a way where you should be able to express the brand based on that very well-defined character in such a way that you can't get it wrong. And even so, like the way we think about character, it's like that personality is at the heart. If you do it right, then you use that and it can form not just your marketing design, but your service design, your customer support design, your retail spaces. And it all comes from the same place and feels the same way. And that's going to build that equity and that's going to build those expectations. And that's what's going to make people, if they see your ad and your logo's not even on it, yes, they know.
Yeah, that's true. Wow. Yeah, that's a really interesting way to think about it. You're thinking, a couple moves ahead, right? You're like, okay, how can I make this easy for the next person and the next person? That's really cool. Joel, this has been super enlightening. I've gone deeper on brand than I think I personally ever have, coming from the media side. Where can people find out more about you and your companies?
Yeah, I mean, fortwest.com. Come along. It's, we got a nice, clean, easy to read website. We got some case studies on there. You can find us there. If you want to find out more about me specifically, joelkleinberg.com, KLEINBERG. I'm sure you can just post it in the comments. I can subscribe, smash the button. But yeah, I think that's probably the best place to find information about us. My own site is, there's portfolio on there, but I really do go into my philosophy a lot. I really am one that believes that, if we look at the times in our history in this country where we've had the most prosperity, it was when companies were on the rise and building, but they were also part of their communities.
Right.
That was part of their brand. And their brands were always about how do we represent the culture?
Yeah.
So like, when Detroit was on the upside, they were building opera houses, and they were building baseball fields for the kids. They were building this workforce, a nice middle-class workforce as well, and investing in the community around it. And, some of the best brands out there still do it. Chobani, watch that TED Talk if you haven't. The guy from Chobani talking about how he built that brand. Really exciting. Or, even Coca-Cola working with people to, this guy discovered that dysentery is a problem in Africa and you can't get it's easy medicine, but it has to be refrigerated. And that's why they can't get it to places. So they started working with Coca-Cola because the guy noticed that the Coke truck shows up in every village, no matter what.
Wow.
So they started putting the dysentery medicine in the packaging with the Coca-Cola so that the local clinics could treat people, right? And that goes right with Coca-Cola's brand because Coca-Cola is about hope, innocence, and bringing us all together to sing in perfect harmony, right? So when brands operate outside their initial purview of selling product and they do steward the cultures that they're part of, that's where they build connections, that's where they build community, and that's where they build that trust. If we look at the recent dip in Nike, there's plenty of people written about it, you can find it out there. Bloomberg did an article recently, but they went all in on digital. They stopped thinking about their verticals, but they're going trying to be all data driven and whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But they stopped their relationships with their most important retailers and they stopped doing those big brand moments that they're known, right? Especially those big brand moments that matter to the individual communities, because Nike basketball's community is different from Nike baseball, is different from running. Those are different because They all believe in the just do it Nike hero. It comes to life in different ways. And they are now shaking up their management again because they realize we got to get back to what we do best, which is driving culture
Right.
and then selling shoes, t-shirts or whatever. Innovation. They got innovation and performance for sure. But that is because people believe that they're going to drive culture.
Yeah. Well, that's great, Joel. Thank you so much for that last piece. I think that was really important as well. All right. Have a great day.
Yeah. Thank you very much.